Well, Gleeso, the point that I want to make is that no one's suggesting we're building nuclear reactors in the middle of Melbourne. But this is about the Parliament having the opportunity to go and have the discussion and have the conversation with the Australian people, who I think a couple of weeks ago made a very common sense decision. It was a victory for common sense at the last election. Nuclear power is utilised by more than 30 countries around the world. We are the only major economy that doesn't make use of this technology, and it has moved very rapidly in recent years. So I think there is value in looking at that technology and what opportunities there may be for Australia. This is a process which could take up to 2 decades.
OK, so take us through how it would work and what are the advantages that nuclear power would bring to a country like Australia?
Well, firstly, the Senate Select Committee, the Senate sets its own agenda. So that the Senate would have a motion put before it which would be debated. There would then be a vote, a ballot, and depending, of course, on who has the majority, whether that motion gets up. If the Senate Select Committee is formed with its terms of references as debated, then they will investigate nuclear energy and certainly new nuclear technology, which is being utilised right across the world. Now, obviously, it's a difficult issue, but I think we need to be adult enough to have the conversation. Now, down the track, if we look at what's happening in other places, we know that nuclear technology is utilised, particularly in defence, whether that is in submarines or ships or other manners. We need to ensure that in the future, and particularly in the long term, that Australia can source what it needs. So I think this needs to be a very holistic approach. We need to be very clear-eyed and open-minded. But, you know, straight away we have the Labor Party out screaming about which electorate will you build a reactor in. I think we're adult enough to have this conversation. I've been really surprised at the level of support that is out there for us to start having this conversation with the Australian people. And there's any number of organisations which are 100% supportive.
And, of course, the mere mention of the word nuclear conjures up images that, you know, a lot of people react very emotionally to. I guess a big part of this debate will be about the education process and educating Australians on what it brings to the table. And I mean, you know, you've also got the PR war that you have to wage because, as I said, that whole issue around nuclear energy creates all these emotions. How will you get past that?
Well, I think firstly we do need bipartisan support. You know, it's easy to run a scare campaign, but it's much more difficult to deliver solutions for Australia in the long term. And this is not just about nuclear reactors that could potentially provide energy which is clean, green and efficient. It is about the opportunity for more advanced manufacturing. It is about the opportunity for our universities and education. We would need to build an entire new sector of the economy, which does take time, it takes planning, it takes commitment, and I think we just need to be able to have the conversation. So it takes a bit of moral fortitude, I've got to say, Gleeso. There's occasions where people throw all sorts of things my way and our way in terms of Senator McGrath. But, you know, if you want to have a difficult conversation, the best time to start is today. And certainly the Parliament is yet to be formed. So I think it's a debate we have to have. We haven't looked at this issue, in my view, properly since about 2006 under John Howard. And the technology has shifted. We now have thorium reactors an option, prism reactors, Gen 4, sodium cooling. So it is a very, very different technology to what it was 20 and 30 years ago.
Do you believe it will lower electricity prices?
Well, I think everything is about a balance. You know, as an engineer, mate, you've got to look at cost effectiveness. That comes down to fuel sources and locations and what ancillary devices you need and connections into the network. So it's not a single point of selection. You need to look at all of those issues. I've always been technology agnostic. I think we need to look at every opportunity to drive down the cost of electricity. And let's face facts, we are losing manufacturing businesses. I have a foundry in Bundaberg which has been there for more than 125 years. They are at real risk of closure because their electricity bill next year will go up by $1 million. Now, they have trained literally thousands of people across that 100 years of operation. I don't want to see them go. I don't want us to be reliant on overseas manufacturing for everything we need in this country. And if we want them to stay and we want to continue to have high wages in this country, well, we need to do something about the cost of energy. And,
of course, power prices, I think, are the hip pocket issue of our times, of our generation. And you just mentioned an example there. We know the Rockhampton Bowls Club had to recently close because its power bill was doubled in the preceding 3 years. I mean, it is a major, major issue. I think, you know, certainly we need to have this debate.
Well, and this is the point. We are talking about having a conversation with the Australian people. I think they are adult enough to have that discussion, and I think the better informed they are, the better decisions they will make. We've seen them reject Labor's ideology at the last election. They have rejected 50% renewable targets. I mean, they get it. They know what drives up power prices. They know what makes the network less reliable. And I think we need to look at every avenue that's available to help them, to help our economy and to drive jobs into our economy.
All right, Keith, a couple of questions without notice. The cashless debit card, you've been the champion of the cashless debit card and it's been trialled in your electorate. How's it going, and is there likely to be an expansion of your trial up in the seat of Hinkler into other electorates throughout the country now that the Morrison government has been returned?
Well, the trial is underway. We've rolled it out to the 6,000 odd participants. I think we've had some success already. Certainly what we've done in terms of regional economies and building local jobs. We've had our youth unemployment rate, would you believe, drop from just under 28% to around 17% since about September last year. Now, in anyone's terms, that is a significant change. We want that trend to continue. But we do need to attack this on a number of different fronts. So along with the cashless debit card, we have the Hinkler regional deal. We have $173 million on the table from the federal government. We want the state to get on board, but, you know, obviously they played political games for the period of the federal election. And I think that time is now over. We need council to put their contribution out. But in terms of the cashless debit card, we know that it's worked in other trial sites. This is the first significant expansion, just over 6,000 participants. And I just want to once again confirm with the people who are watching your show that the trial for the Hinkler electorate will not be expanded to include pensioners. It won't be expanded to include the DSP. We've had all of these scare campaigns from the Greens and others. It's just complete nonsense. There is a piece of legislation through the Parliament and the Senate which outlines who is in the group, the cohort that are affected. And we've had very, very positive feedback in terms of people who are now able to save money. They are spending less on drugs and alcohol is the feedback that we've received. But the government has committed to doing a review through the University of South Australia, and that work is underway.
Now, you and I haven't spoken since you were on my show over summer. You were quite bullish. You were one of the few politicians in this country that gave Scott Morrison any chance of winning on May 18. Are you going to erect a statue to Bob Brown in Bundaberg after his rolling blockade went through central Queensland and basically turned just about every voter in central and north Queensland off the Labor Party and the Greens?
Oh, look, I think the first statue, Gleeso, should go to my colleagues, to their supporters and all those volunteers that work so hard. I mean, this is a team game. You can't win these things by yourself. Every single one of them had hundreds and hundreds of people out helping them because they believed in the cause and what we stood for. But, yeah, Bob Brown was pretty helpful. I think it was a major mistake from the Labor Party. I don't think they understand Queensland at all. And, in fact, they're still out there complaining that Queenslanders didn't understand them. Well, I think they've been very, very much wholesalely rejected. I think Labor should get on with it. It's not for me to give them advice, but you've got to accept when you get something wrong, and they were very, very clearly got it wrong on this occasion. But Bob Brown absolutely crystallised the issue in central Queensland. For the people of Clermont to be standing on the side of the road protesting, that should say to every individual across this country how serious they were about protecting their jobs and protecting their industry.
Keith Pitt, thanks for joining us on Credlin tonight.
Mate, great to be with you.